Not too long after Moses led the nation of Israel from the great escape across the Red Sea, now it's time. Now it's time to enter into the promised land and think about, again, what they have been through. They were captives, prisoners, slaves in Egypt. They get the great escape. They go through the Red Sea. They see it stand up on its end. They pass through. Once they get over there, they get miraculous food. They get miraculous water. There's a battle that ensues, and they win that battle. It's an incredible time, and now it's time to gather the 1.5 million people and go to the promised land. This is why I got you out of Egypt. This is where I'm going to establish my people. It is time to go to the promised land. This is where we are going to have this incredible place where we're going to raise our family, where we will follow, or God will say, where you will follow after me. Are you ready? Let's go get the promised land. So Moses says, let's get 10 spies, let's get 10 people from these tribes, these men, and let's send them in there to kind of scout it out. The Lord said it's our land. The Lord said he wants us to go, but let's go in there and do our due diligence and let's see if it's really all that we think it's going to be. We pick up the story in Numbers chapter 13, verse 26. The men went back to Moses, Aaron, and the entire Israelite community in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back a report for them and the whole community, and they showed them the fruit of the land. They reported to Moses, we went into the land where you sent us. Indeed, it is flowing with milk and honey. And here is some fruit. Flowing with milk and honey was their way of saying it's fertile ground. It's incredible for harvesting. It's an incredible place for our families. It's everything God said it would be. It's flowing with milk and honey. Here's some fruit. Verse 28. However, the people living in the land are strong, and the cities are large and fortified. We also saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites are living in the land of the Negev, the Hethites and the Jebusites and the Amorites. They live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live by the sea along the Jordan. They go in, these spies, we're going to find out it's 8 of them, and they go in, and even though they know this is God's plan, even though they experienced all of these things, they begin to report back out of reason, not this idea of revelation. They came back and they said, we're realists. Did you see there's some very big people over there? Not sure what God is doing, but it looks way, way too vast of their army. These are huge people, and they tell the truth. They see the reality, but they're looking at it in a sense, again, of reason. What makes sense for us to go in there? Not through revelation. Verse 30, then Caleb quieted the people in the presence of Moses and said, let's go up now and take possession of the land because we can certainly conquer it. Caleb sees the same things, but he's not seeing it through this idea of being a realist. He's not seeing it as by reason. He's like, God is in this. He's seeing it through a revelation. His faith informs his optimism. His fear is not going to induce pessimism. Verse 31. But the men who had gone up with him responded, we can't. We can't attack the people because they're stronger than we are. So they gave a negative report to the Israelites about the land that they had scouted. The land we pass through to explore is one that devours its inhabitants, fear. And all the people we saw in it are men of great size, fear. We even saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak, come from the Nephilim, which is all true. To ourselves, to ourselves, we seemed like grasshoppers, and we must have seemed the same to them. Pessimism, fear, breeds negative perspective, breeds negative reporting, and it even begins to have you what I call awfulize, because they said, unlike Caleb, they said, we seem to ourselves as grasshoppers. Were these people giants? Were they that much bigger? Or through their fear, through their lack of faith, through their pessimism, now they're awfulizing, making the situations way worse. They're forgetting the great escape. We cut through the Red Sea. We have water from a rock. We have free quail. We got everything. God's in control. God says, God's always there. But we seem like grasshoppers. This is an incredible story. One of the most famous stories. 10 spies go in, 2 come back, Caleb and Joshua, and they say, God is in it. Absolutely everything those people said is true. Doesn't matter. Pack it up, boys. We're heading in. Caleb said, let's go now and take possession of the land. What's the difference? It's perspective. It's the idea of faith. You see, our perspective of what God can do is either informed by faith or by fear, especially when it comes to doing things that are really large, really in a sense of, if God's not in this, this could go really south, which conjures up the fear. So our perspective. You see, the majority of those 8 came back and they were fearful. And they began to give negative stories. You can go read it. And everybody begins to listen to them. And at that point, you would think that Caleb and Joshua and there's Moses would win out the day. The positive would win out the negative. The faith-filled 2 would win over, right? Not so much. God's like, well, I guess these folks, they're going to have to learn. They're going to have to learn to live by faith. They're going to have to learn that when I've asked them to do something, told them to do something, I am in control. They're going to have to learn to live by revelation, which is, if God is in this, then we're going to move forward, and not so much by reason. It just doesn't look like it. We look like grasshoppers. It doesn't look like we should do this. Again, you and I, if we were in charge, we're like, you know what, we're going. We're going to take those 2. God says no. So here's what we're going to do. You're not going to the promised land. All you adults, you're staying here, and you're going to roam for the next 40 years. That's the part of the story I didn't tell you about, the Moses story. I told you about how they finally went in. Moses couldn't go in because he was angry. The adults here, they couldn't go in because they were fearful. You're not getting the promised land. You're going to stay right here. God said they could do it, said they could. Just go and see. Now, it didn't mean they weren't going to have to work. They've already been through a battle. Didn't mean they weren't going to have to sacrifice. They've already seen that type of sacrifice. Didn't mean it wasn't going to be hard. Doesn't mean it was going to be painful. It just said, God said, that's your property. That's our land. Let's move through. This is where we're creating our new community. This is where your families will be raised. Let's go. So he never promised them an easy path. He never said it wouldn't be full of sacrifice and hardship. He just said, this is what is for you. They lost their perspective. How is your perspective on difficult things? What about things that you really feel like you know that God is leading you to do, especially if it's a biblical deal, right? There's a moral thing there, something you know is the will of God. But it seems hard. Seems a little tricky. Is your perspective of the situation driven by faith or fear? Brian Dixon, in his book Calm in Chaos, Calm in the Chaos, he has two mindsets he goes back and forth on. One he calls a fixed mindset. The other one he calls a growth mindset. A fixed mindset, he says, your intelligence, capabilities, who you are, that's just who you will always be. And this thing cannot be altered through training, through experiences, through knowledge, and through determination. It's a fixed mindset. This is who I am. I will never be any better. This is all I can accomplish. These are my capabilities. It's a fixed mindset. He said that's one group of people. The other group of people, he said, are those with a growth mindset. And this is based on a positive perspective, he says. You believe that your intelligence, that your capabilities, and just who you are can actually be improved through training, through experiences, through knowledge and determination. And he uses this in his training. He uses this to help people understand that you can do and be more than you ever thought possible. It is this belief that you can and do and be way more than you ever thought possible based on the perspective of the situation. And although this author, Brian, is a Christian, he's not writing a Christian book here. But what about those of us who are Christians? We throw in the faith element. This is all the truer when you are moving in faith as God leads. As God is leading, you don't have a fixed mindset. I can never be greater. I can never accomplish that. Do you know who I am? Do you know my parents? Do you know? It's a fixed mindset, a growth mindset, fueled by faith. For those of us who are Christians, what is God asking me to do? And why would he do that? I was reading through this book and thinking about this message, and one thing for me very personal came to mind. It was a couple of years ago. It was 2014. Church is doing well. I hadn't been in school in a while. I'd already graduated from seminary with my master's degree, and church was doing well. At the end of the day, I didn't really like school. I didn't graduate from high school or college or master's degree, summa cum laude. I graduated more like, oh, thank you, Lord. Thank you. Thank you. So in 2014, when talking with leadership about the new generations and cultural shifts, how things are happening, in my own prayer time, it was very clear to me that I needed to enhance my education more, not only theologically, biblically, but also culturally. So I engaged in finding out about going back to school. Long story short, was able to get into Baylor to go get my doctorate of ministry. And as I'm praying through that, I'm thinking, man, there's no way. But there was something inside of me that said, what are you, scared? I'm leading you. You need some more information. You need to be forced to read. You need to be forced. I don't just read usually by myself. You need to be forced to read. You got to be doing something. So as he prayed through it, I was like, I need to sign up. So grateful to our lead team who signed off on it, our staff who jumped in, my wife Kelly who jumped in, because this is going to be a long 3.5-year journey, and was able to work and study. And many times there were sacrifices. I was here on Saturdays all by myself on my time off, doing all of these things. And it was very difficult and very challenging. Again, most of you don't know me very well, but to do this was way out of my comfort zone. But I felt like that I needed to have a growth mindset. And I also knew that the Lord was leading and guiding me in that, and to then to receive that type of degree. If anybody knew me in high school, if anybody knew me in college, they'd be like, that ain't happening. It was by the grace of God. Again, oh, thank you, Lord. By the grace of God. As I was reading through this book and thinking about this fixed mindset and growth mindset, it is the perspective, and the reason I almost didn't start is because I didn't want to not finish and be a failure. So fear was going to hold me back, but I felt like the Lord was in it. You have those things too, I hope. What does it feel like to accomplish more than you could ever imagine because God is leading you into things you never thought you could do? God's leading you into faith-filled, rough waters where everyone who's looking at it seems crazy. This is what's happening. Again, we read postscript. I would have been with Joshua and Caleb. Would you? Would you? When you walked in and saw the Nephilim, When you saw all this, would you? Or would you have come back and said, yeah, we can't do it? Would you have moved in reason and been a realist? Or would you have been, you know what? Looks crazy. But if God's in it, if God is in it, then let's move forward. Have you ever attempted something so great, so challenging, that is, if God is not in it, and if God's not going to, if you don't have the ability to work and sacrifice, then it may not happen. That's the story of why they went around 40 years. That's the difference between Joshua and Caleb. As I'm reading through that story and thinking about where we are today, many of you don't even know this because we have so many new people. Great crowd today, by the way. Last year at this time, we as a church charted a course that was fueled by a growth mindset that was informed by faith, where our leadership team first was praying through it for over a year. Our staff started praying through it to jump in and say, you know what, we need to begin to prepare for the future. And once we set a date, we would have never guessed that it had been the worst economy, which continues, inflation, which continues, job market's down, which continues. We could have never known that. But we felt like the Lord was in it. We felt like this is what we needed to lead our church in. And so, if you remember, this time last year, we launched Nexus, connecting our past to God's future. And with this was absolutely this idea of we need more space. We need more space. What is Nexus for those who are new? Which I was telling the band and tech people back here, it's incredible. It's really, really cool what God is doing. If you look at August, September, and October, and you compare Sunday to Sundays, those 3 months, all except for 2 Sundays, the Sunday attendance, middle school, high school, kids, everybody on campus, is over 100 more people per week than this time last year, all but 2 Sundays. Didn't know that last year, but God did. And so what is Nexus? Practically, it's just more room. It's just more room. There's the whole outside idea. You see the outside, and they did a great job. If you're looking over here, you're looking on the side. This is the section over here that will be new. I'll talk more about what's going to be in there. But just practically, it's just brick and mortar. It's a roof. It's electricity. It's more space. It's more space, as we're going to see, for ministry. But I wanted to show that we have so many new people, unless you're looking at the posters outside. There's also the inside. What is Nexus? This is very cool. As you can kind of see, there's more rooms. We're going to talk about what those rooms will be. We'll talk about the need for it. Love the fact right here. We have all these high school kids. They're coming to first service. Brad, Bree, the whole crew, everybody's doing a great job with high school. They're all packed in right here, sitting more than one to a seat, which is awesome. And then they're going to leave here, and then they're going to go down to the school and use the band room for their discipleship class, this group right here. They're going to go use a school, which we don't own, which is awesome, to do discipleship. So those inside, that's what it looks like. And many people today, especially on social media, they have this whole idea, church isn't the building. Absolutely. This is not the church. That wall is not the church. The church is the people. But the people, the team church people, we gather in this facility, and it's in this building that ministry happens. It's in this building that Brad was telling me over 60 high school and middle schoolers just came to hang out in our patio area. And they had like a tailgate, and they just had hot dogs and played wiffle ball. They just hung out, had some college football. They're just hanging out. 60 plus kids, right? With adults. So yeah, the building, the building is not the church. Absolutely, no one ever thought it was. It's the people, but you gotta have a place if you're gonna have multiple generations and multiple things happening to meet. So yes, the church is not the building, it is the people. But as we have learned here, which is not always taught correctly online, the church gathers. You by yourself, you're a Christian in the woods, you're a Christian in the woods. When you come and you gather with other people for mission and purpose, that's the church gathering. So just the practicality of it, what is Nexus? It's a place for more people to gather and ministry to happen. But then why Nexus? Why Nexus? The main important thing, it's the gospel. It's the good news of Christ. It's the names on the wall that many of us have put names of people who we believe or we know are not Christians, and we're praying for them. But this facility, these buildings, this rec field, that courtyard, that parking lot, this stage is used for the gospel. The gospel for us, the gospel for the community. Maybe you didn't even know this. When we built this building, we said we would let our community ministries use it. On Friday, there was a Chinese ministry here, and they had a talent show and a service for those who are mentally and physically handicapped. That was happening right here on Friday in the facility that we own, and it was our gift to them to be able to use it. It happens all the time. This place is full and being in use all the time. It's the gospel. When we think about this building, and the more rooms and the more space, it's about the gospel. When the high school kids were hanging out last night, doing the tailgate, just hanging out, and leaders were building into them, it's about the gospel. It's the good news of Christ that changes our mind. Very specifically, for much of what we need to build is for the next generation. It's the next generation of having places for babies and little kids and kids' ministries. And it's always been that way here, and I love this. Again, so many new people, myself and many others, we've been here the whole run, planted the church in 1999. And it's so fun to see people staying here and raising their kids. As a matter of fact, watch this video.
Hey, I'm Justin.
I'm Lauren, this is Georgia, and we are the Halls.
I've been coming to Team Church since 2013 when I was 21 years old.
And I have been coming to Team Church since November of 2006. I was 8 years old. My earliest memory of being at Team Church is actually being in Mr. Clint's ministry. Mr. Clint likes to make funny ways of saying everybody's last name. So because at the time, my last name was Rossimano, he would announce me like he was announcing a pizza at a pizza parlor in Italy. So I gave my life to Jesus when I was 11 years old at church camp. And shortly after, I was baptized. And sixth grade was such an influential year for me. Obviously, that's the year that I gave my life to Jesus. It's the year I got baptized. It's kind of the year that I figured out a lot of things about faith.
I was invited to Team Church by a friend of mine to check out the music ministry. I played drums here. I've played ever since then, which was in 2013. I've volunteered regularly, playing drums ever since 2013.
I also auditioned for the band when I was 11. If you have ever talked to Rob Pryles, he was there. He used to know me since I was 11. Worship has been such a huge part of my life since then. I went through middle school, dealt with bullies, didn't have many friends, and church was always a place that I could go to where I knew that I had people I could count on. I had such great leaders, such great mentors through worship, and worship also gave me very clear accountability. As Christians, we're called to be set apart, and when you are leading people in worship, you are called to a higher standard. And when I was 11, I didn't know what that looked like, but now, being 25, I definitely understand how it affects other people, who's leading them in worship, and how they're living their lives. And I think that was really important for me as a kid to have those clear boundaries.
I enjoy playing music here at Team Church as the drummer because I believe it's a pathway for me to be able to create an atmosphere for people to worship and create a moment where they can connect and really feel the presence of God rather than just hearing it. They can actually feel it, and I love the conduit that the drums are to be able to allow them to have that feeling at church.
We started dating and got married in 2022. And actually in that time period, we were told that we were not going to be able to have children naturally, that it was going to be quite a process for us. And that was pretty devastating news as a newly married couple, and also a couple that dreamed of having children. But very shortly after that, we found out we were pregnant with our miracle baby, Georgia. So her birthday is March 27th, 2023. Our wedding anniversary is March 26th, 2022. So she came very shortly after we got married, and we are just thrilled to have our family. It's so important to us that Georgia has a community the way that we both did, especially me having been at Team Church since I was so young. It's such a privilege and a gift to see the people that prayed over me my entire life, praying over Georgia, loving on her in the nursery. It's not something that people get to have very often, and I think it's really special that she has generations of people that are loving on her, praying for her, and guiding her spiritually. We wouldn't have any of the things that we have if not for Team Church. I mean, we met each other at Team Church. We got married. We were married by people that went to Team Church. Our whole wedding was people from Team Church, basically. And now we're raising our child in the same building that we cultivated our relationships with the Lord. And hopefully she'll grow up to feel the same way that we do. It's so important for our family that we have a place that we can go and raise, our daughter and our future children and the next generation of children that are going to follow the Lord and do what they're called to do. So we're really excited to be part of this.
Absolutely.
I hope you keep that in.
The next generation is absolutely, we talked about this time last year. That's why we're doing this. Much of this is for kids, and we know that kids in the next generation is a challenge, and we as a church are poised and have the desire to meet that challenge. Why next is also discipleship growth. The discipleship growth. This building is full throughout the whole week, with groups meeting everywhere, and we need more space, of course. We talked about this last week. We have pictures here of showing this different things of all the different areas where people are meeting because there's no space. If you've ever been back to what is my office, it's my office most of the time during the week. It's also storage. That's where everything for the North Carolina people up in the mountains. It's a storage room. It's where groups meet every night of the week. It's where kids' overflow is. So every space we have is being used. Every space we don't have is not being used because we actually have a great thing to be able to use the school behind us. But it's for this idea of discipleship. If you ever drove by here during the week, you ought to. Christine does a great job, and we have home teams that meet here, classes, all types of stuff. And so this facility, this building would give us more ability. When that thing is here, these high schoolers would leave and they'd have a room to go to. It's very easy, very clear to understand. The discipleship process, the discipleship growth is also the process. We talked about this last year. For those of us who have never been challenged to be a growth mindset, living by revelation and not reason person. And I've heard so many incredible stories of people who heard from God, trusted God, started giving and sacrificing, and what God is doing. And we've had so many people grow in their own discipleship because of understanding to pray it through. Why Nexus? Relational gathering. I give you all kinds of examples. You know what's going on, and so that would help us. The outdoor area, more atrium area. It's just a place. Again, church is not the building, but ministry and discipleship, and especially kids ministry, middle school ministries, high school ministries, all of that happen here. We understand that's what is, right? It's kind of like the 8 leaders that went in. They understood that it was flowing with milk and honey, the land. They understood that it was God's deal. They understood it would be great to be there. So it was absolutely an understandable thing to take the promised land, but we want to make sure that when we see what is, that we understand it's God moving us. So who is Nexus? Who is, as we're doing this update from a year ago, who is Nexus? It's those who have given and pledged. And from myself, our leadership team, our staff, from all of our volunteers, our kids, thank you for those who are giving and pledged. I want to encourage you to keep going. I did this a couple of weeks ago, and I'll continue to do it because I keep hearing stories. I want you to know that you're not crazy. For many of us who are new, or some of us who didn't jump right in just yet, you should know that sitting amongst you are people who have, for this year, they're not eating out as much. They canceled some of their TV apps. They're driving older cars. They reduced some of their expenditures on vacation or whatever it was so that they could then have the ability to give what God asked them to give sacrificially. So if that is you, and so many of you, and this year has not been easy for those, many of those who sacrificially pledged and are giving. So thank you. You are Nexus. That's who Nexus is. It's the people who understand. I want to bridge the gap. I want to have that connection from our past to what God's future may be. I want to be with those who are going into the promised land. That's who Nexus is. But it's also those who will give and pledge. Tons and tons of new people. A lot of people were new this time last year, and you shouldn't have given. You're like, I'm not even sure what's going on. These people are crazy. But now if you're still here, you've been here maybe 10, 11, 12 months, 8 months, however long, who is Nexus is those who will give and pledge. I want to encourage you. This time last year, I encouraged all of us, I want to dare you to pray. Dare you to think about the gospel, the next generation, about gathering areas, discipleship for growth. Think through that and just see if the Lord would lead you to be a part of what we believe He is leading us to do, what we're seeing happen. That's who Nexus is. I encourage you to pray through that. Because of the website, you can always go to the website and join right in and make a pledge, and it'll help you because our pledging is for 25 months. It'll all be over in January of 2026. So we're not even already fully halfway through in the pledging and the giving, but the giving is going great. We're absolutely right on pace with what was promised and pledged. And you guys are doing an incredible job, but that is who is Nexus. Nexus are those who are praying and giving and sacrificially giving, who want to be a part of the next generation, to be a part of discipleship that happens here in this building over the next couple of years. Those who are enjoying this incredible facility we have now, God's passed here and says, you know what, I'll be a part of helping the future. That is who is Nexus. Just as a little update, what is the Nexus next steps? The new sewer just got the final approval. And so could be by the end of this year, we could see the dirt turning because now we got the city giving us their final approval. Many of us don't really understand construction stuff. We said this last year. It takes a long time to get stuff in, the city to approve stuff. It is cray, right? So that's all finally done. And so now we're going to have a sewer, which is huge, because we're still in a septic tank, which could go out at any moment. But also we can't build and be what God wants us to be without the ability to now link up to the sewer. So the sewer construction starts here soon. The architectural build drawings, the actual details, we're wanting to start that in early 2025 because, again, it takes a long time, permitting and all of that, while we're doing Nexus, while we're giving. We also have a goal to raise $100,000 to pay for those drawings. Now, we have the money that's been given, but we thought, wouldn't that be kind of cool if through part of our year-end gift, those who have not given to Nexus, they didn't sacrificially give at the end of last year to make sure this thing could happen, so now it is happening. We thought, man, it'd be great if those who haven't given, and now you're like, hey, I believe this is what I want to do. I see God's in this. And it'd be great to be able to, as part of our year-end gift, which is, you're going to see, part of it would be able to say, you know what, without touching what's in the bank, the money that's coming in, we've got an extra $100,000, what they're telling us to be actually make all the detailed drawings. That's an incredible thing. Speaking of that, as we close today, this time every year, I was telling the band backstage, you know, sometimes those of us who come here all the time, we read all the newsletters and stuff, we're like, I already know all this stuff. I was like, we need to realize there's so many new people that we have to always help us understand what is the year-end gift. Our year-end gift for 2024 already says real people, real needs. And we have a goal of $250,000 that will be given just to that. Of that, we want 100, but it'll be the last 100. The first 150 goes to our missions. It goes to all of our partners. If we hit that goal, the last 100 will go to the buildings, the same thing we did last year. As a matter of fact, many of you know that we have our overseas missions. For many years, we give tons and tons of money to the Cyprus Project. And here's an update from Neil, who has spoken here on Sunday mornings.
Greetings, Team Church. I'm Neil McGlowan, and I lead the Cyprus Project, and you guys have been an incredible partner with us for years. Over the last 15 years, you have helped us to impact and train church planters and church pastors around the world. Over 3,000 from 1,000 different churches in a dozen different countries and 36 different U.S. cities. We have come alongside pastors and church starters to help them to understand how they can be part of a movement, not just help their church succeed, how they can impact their city, not just make their church plant work. And so we've done that by helping them to think in terms of a movement of kingdom people who are mobilized into the harvest where they live, learn, work, and play as missionary disciples so that every man, woman, and child has multiple opportunities to hear, see, and respond to the gospel without having to come or go anywhere. That's our job. And you guys have helped us to do it. Even in just the last few weeks, we've had Cyprus alumni, without me, lead workshops in the Dominican Republic for pastors from Haiti and the Dominican Republic in Creole and Spanish and English. A few weeks ago, we had alumni lead a workshop here in the Charleston area for teams from around the Carolinas who want to take Cyprus to their own cities, including Charlotte. And then last week, we had a team of alumni in Honduras leading 20-something leaders there in terms of how to impact their city and their geography. And you guys have been part of all that. In fact, next year are some of our biggest goals that we've ever had, and that is to hand off Cyprus to city leaders from Boston, from LA, from Pakistan. How do we bring leaders from the cities we've been in now for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years together in order to learn from each other and hand off the ownership of this training process so it can multiply even faster? Thank you guys for your partnership. We look forward to what God has ahead of us, and we are so thankful for what God's already done.
It's amazing. The thing reminds me how old I am now. But I met Neil 27 years ago. He was part of the association here, the Baptist Metropolitan Ministries, that helped plant this church. And he was on our first lead team. And from our church, we began this movement. From our church, we began to help with this Cyprus. It was called something different back then, but now it's Cyprus. Neil and his family have now moved to Charleston, South Carolina. But yeah, from the very get-go, we have always been giving thousands of dollars to help train pastors around the world, literally in third world countries and other countries where Christianity is not real. So Cyprus Project, when you think of year-end gift, it is our global missions. It is our local missions. You know, every year we have all the bags here, and we give to all these schools. That comes from year-end gift. Here in a couple of weeks, you'll start seeing all the Christmas stuff, where I think last year was like $7,000 or $8,000 we paid for it, and we buy gifts and stuff, and we take to homes here locally. So you can go online and look and see all of the things that our year-end gift does. It supports our Go missions. I told you a couple weeks ago, we were able to not have to ask for any money. We had it sitting there in our emergency missions fund, and we were able to send it and help those, our neighbors and friends in North Carolina. So this is what we talk about in the year-end gift. I want to ask you again to be praying for that. It is real people with real needs. AJ and Liberty Holt are going to be our next church plant, and they're in St. Petersburg. We talk about real people and real needs because of what we give and the money that will come through our Go missions. AJ and Liberty and all of their family, they're going to stay on our medical insurance. We'll provide for their medical insurance. We will also provide monthly money for them to have ministry in the new church. So it's an incredible deal. Thank you so much for those who are always giving. For those of us who are new, again, we don't have thermometers. We don't put up all this stuff. We just say, you know what? Here's the goal that we believe for our missions and what we've been asked to do. And the greatest thing is this. I love coming up here the second Sunday in January, and I say, hey, we hit our goal, which means we can contact our missionaries globally, we can contact our missionaries locally, we can contact our church partners, our church plants, we can contact the schools, we can contact everybody and say, doesn't matter what happens in 2025, we already have the money. It's sitting right here, and our missions will go as planned. So that's what our year-end gift 2024. And again, for this year, it is the idea of what would it look like if many people jumped in and helped us to get that $100,000 so we can hit the year running, get the architectural plans rolling. One last thing about our year-end gift, which I think is incredible. As you're sitting here right now, that nice, sometimes air conditioning, sometimes heat. So we talk about moving in faith, but here at Team Church, we live by the idea of understanding being well budgeted, right? And so right behind here is a big old HVAC system that multiple years ago, the people who fixed it said, that thing's not going to last long. You better start saving up. And so every year we put some money aside. We told you about it from our year-end gift. Just tuck it over here, tuck it over here. That thing finally ended, right? We moved in this building in 2006. It finally was ended. And so 2 weeks ago, we paid cash because of multiple years of year-end gift, being wise with our money. We paid cash for an $85,000 unit. You never had to think about it. We never asked you. We didn't have to. Why? Because that's what the year-end gift is. We don't come every couple of weeks. We need this, we need that. We save, we understand. You see those pretty chairs you're sitting on? Those things got put in here in 2006. They got put here in 2006. And we know pretty soon here we're going to need some new chairs. They're about $100 a piece. Over the last couple of years, we've been setting aside money when we say that we need to have facilities, things that are breaking. That's what year-end gift does. It's an incredible deal. And it enables us to do ministry and missions. And when things break, when things happen, you don't see us up here all the time with thermometers and trying to raise money. Don't have to do it. Don't have to do it. Thank you. It's been 1 year. Nexus is going awesome. It's going great. Keep giving. If you haven't jumped in, we encourage you to jump in. It is about the gospel, the next generation. It is about discipleship growth. It is about relational gathering. It is about what God is doing in our church. I would love for everybody to be a part. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for today. I pray, God, that you would use the inspiration of this story for us to have a growth mindset, to trust in you, that for many of us, we would not move based on fear, based on being a realist, based on reason, but God, we would move in revelation. We would move in what you're asking us to do. Once we know you say go, we go. We ask it in your name. Amen.